Is that sign up sheet? Sorry.
I'm not afraid to. Who said no on his, but I'm not
The
afraid.
rest of them.
Huh?
Yeah, any the rest of them, you good.
Or every one of them.
Yeah. There we go. Well, good morning. We do have a sign-up sheet. Does anybody need to sign up to speak to one of the measures on the agenda this morning? If not, we're going to ask Chairman Prince if he'll open in prayer for us this morning. Y'all bow with us.
Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for another opportunity to do the business of this great state of Georgia. We ask for your wisdom, your guidance, your understanding, but most of all, your son, Jesus. And it's his name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the members for being here early this morning on this day off. We got a few Senate bills on our agenda today. Glad to see we have some senators with us. I think we'll start with SB 507. If you want to come to the table to present.
Good morning. Big old chair right here. It's an honor to be with you guys, ladies, on this crisp Tuesday morning, Election Day, and it's a patriotic day to be in Georgia. Wouldn't you agree? Now, what you see before you is a sample display of a proposed tag that this bill will allow. There's only 400 license plates in Georgia. I didn't know that until I started doing the research. So this adds just one more to the list of many choices that Georgians will have going forward. But this license plate represents our patriotism and our love for our country and our state. It's the America First license plate, and it underscores the importance of emphasizing domestic concerns such as economic stability, national security, strong borders, and the protection of American jobs. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's a whole lot more to explain or to describe, but I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have.
All right,
I will say this. Unlike other license plates you may see in your committee, the revenue from the sale of this will go to the general fund. It's not to be isolated or partitioned off into certain other places. So this money does
and that was a
come back.
comment I was going to
Yes,
make. It goes to the general fund.
That's correct.
Any revenue off this
That's
plate
right.
goes into the general fund.
That's right.
All right, we have number 17, I think was first, Representative Kenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir.
On President's Day, just for grins, I did a list of my top 10 presidents. There were 5 Republicans on that list, 5 Democrats. Republicans included Lincoln, Eisenhower, Reagan. Democrats included Roosevelt, Truman, and who was it? Johnson, yeah. We've had a lot of great American presidents in our time. Men of decent character, did a lot for our country. A lot of presidents that we could pay tribute to, honor. The 45th president is not one of those. This man has been impeached twice in the most bipartisan impeachment in American history. He's been found guilty in a court of law for sexual assault, fraud. I just don't know why we're blowing kisses to Donald Trump. And this is a direct connection, that is a direct nexus to Donald Trump, when Donald Trump is not even worthy to tie the shoes of someone like Jimmy Carter.
So I didn't hear a question there, but I'm happy to respond.
Yes. Is there a question? Or is it just
Yeah, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
If I may respond, I would simply say that we should not allow one person to stand in the way of all of us being united to stand for freedom and patriotism for our nation. We all took an oath of office to enforce and adhere to the Constitution of the state of Georgia and to the United States Constitution, just like every president has before us. I'm not going to sit here and talk about one particular president because there's a lot of people here that could talk about others that may be in your party or vice versa. This tag has zero to do with any particular person. It may be tied directly to somebody's campaign today, but this tag and that slogan, America First, can go back to the early 1900s to Woodrow Wilson, and it can be used throughout history to include Ronald Reagan. So this is not about a particular person or president or a former president. It is about our nation, and I would encourage both parties to support our nation, and this is one way to display that patriotism.
Okay, number 15, Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do have a question here, at least two questions, but I first want to say the slogan is very divisive. It has a history of that. 1920, during World War II, the Nazi sympathizers used the slogan. In 1940s, the slogan was used for the birth of a nation, which we know is the KKK. In 2017, David Dukes used the slogan. And now we have the former president, twice impeached, using the slogan. We are state legislators, so why not use the slogan Georgia First? That's the one question.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is, do you know about the history of that slogan?
To answer your first question, Georgia First is not particularly a bad thing. If you wanted to present a similar tag, I would encourage you to do so, Representative. I would support that in the Senate if you bring it over there and pass it over there. But this is about our nation, not our state. We do have to adhere to the state constitution, but we also adhere to the U.S. Constitution, and we should all be pulling together as a nation and not divide each other by states or by counties or cities. And so I think America First says a lot about our nation and our support for our troops who are fighting and sacrificing their lives daily all over the planet today. They're fighting for our nation, not our state. And so I believe this symbolizes our love for our country. And it's not about the KKK. I'm offended that you would think that I would bring such a symbol to this body. This does not have anything on it that resembles racism. The American flag is not a racist symbol, in my opinion.
All right, number 18, Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess, Senator Gooch, I just, my only concern is, do you know how divisive this tag is? I mean, I've gotten so many emails that it's just blowing my mind. I mean, so do you not think it's divisive? That's a yes or no?
No, sir, absolutely not, Representative. It says Georgia, USA, and America First, and the American flag in the background. I cannot understand for the life of me why anyone that is a Georgia resident would consider this divisive. I just do not understand that.
Mr. Chair, follow up. I guess is they figure it's divisive because of the history of the American First. I don't know if you saw the AJC article already that came out today about this.
No, sir, I haven't.
Okay, well, Senator Goose, I just want you to know that it's very divisive, and I will be voting no.
I respect your opinion.
Number 23, Chairman Ridley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my colleagues that I deeply respect, and your opinion, I think that there's nothing divisive about this because one guy used it that y'all don't agree with. If we'd never elected Donald Trump and he never used that, like you, Mr. Kennard said down there, one of his top ones was Ronald Reagan, who used this slogan. And I don't think y'all would have an issue with it. On the divisiveness of it, I think you can make anything divisive. If we put Georgia First on there, you could make that divisive because Governor Kemp used that if you wanted to. There's a problem in this country that we're forgetting where we live at and not being proud of it. That's all this does. It does not have, Donald Trump's name on it nowhere. It's a slogan that he's used. It's a freedom of speech. And I guess it worries me a little bit if I ever think America should be first, because it should be. We've sent all of our jobs over countries that they're not our friends. We're trying to get those back, and that's what that slogan was when Ronald Reagan used it. That's what that slogan was when other presidents has used it. So, Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Number 22, Representative Montahan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this great bill. You know, I think it was actually Woodrow Wilson that first used America First.
You are correct, sir.
And it was used by a litany of different presidents since to recognize who we should be taking care of in this country. You know, I think to the gentleman to my right's point, we send a whole lot of money over to China and a lot of different countries who are not our friend. And maybe it's time we start thinking about, I certainly wouldn't want to see, and I don't know if this is what my colleagues appropriately to my left would want, but I wouldn't want to see Georgia Tech that says China first. I wouldn't want to see one that says Russia first.
No, sir.
I want to see one that says America first. I think it means a lot to this country. It's meant a lot to a lot of different political figures throughout the ages. And for that, I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that the 45th president's not the last president that will put America first. I hope every president in the future will put America first.
All right, we have Chairman Prince.
Hey, Senator, thank you for giving us this opportunity to vet this. I appreciate that. And some of my colleagues, I mean, you mentioned America First. What does that mean, America First, to you?
To me, it means that you're putting our interest in our people of this great country above others first. That doesn't mean you can't also support other nations or other people and other causes, but the needs of our country should become our first priority. Just like we vote every day in this chamber, in this committee, and in the House of Representatives and the State Senate, we vote for the good of Georgia first. Is that not, would you not agree?
I would agree. And to that point, do you not think that we as Georgians, legislators, we do not put Georgia first?
Yeah, I'm not here to question your patriotism
Well,
and
but-
your dedication to your constituents. No, sir, I think you do a fine job representing the people in your district. But what this is intended to do is to unify our nation and our state and to proudly present the American flag to our citizens on our streets and say we do proudly support our country and we stand for unity and we stand for patriotism. And that's what this symbolizes.
Further question. And I guess where I'm going with this, the presidents that we talked about, some have mentioned earlier, the Congress folks that we have there, serving now and in the past, do you not think that they put America first? And where I'm going with this, because do we not stop? I mean, is this saying that we don't give aid to China? We don't give aid to those countries whom we normally support because we are America? Mm-hmm. Are we questioning the patriotism, the values, the commitment of the leaders that we've already elected to not do this?
Oh, I think everyone in this room has a different opinion on what patriotism looks like to them. I can't sit here and tell you what's in your heart or what's in the hearts of other men or women in this country that are serving our nation. But I do believe that as a group of men and women that represent our constituents back home, we should stand for unity in our country. We should stand for bipartisanship where we can. That doesn't mean we're always going to agree on everything, but I think we should be able to agree on something as simple as loving our nation and pledging allegiance to our flag. We do it every day in the Senate, and I'm sure you do in the House as well. And so this is a simple gesture showing that love and patriotism for our country.
And again, I thank you for that, that part. Having served a couple of days in the military,
We appreciate your
in
service.
Certain wars and place overseas, you know, and I truly believe, I guess, from my living, especially from my service, that we do put America first, and I just thank you for that.
Thank you, Representative, for your service. I will proudly purchase one of these tags for my vehicles at home in honor of your service to our nation. So I appreciate your service.
And to that point, you see some states giving away free housing, food to people that's here illegally, and we've got homeless veterans on the street that we should be taking. So we're not,
That's right.
in all cases, all states are not supporting our homeless veterans that we should be doing absolutely first before we start, looking elsewhere.
We could all do better.
Number 25.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator Gooch, for bringing this. Just a little different perspective, listening to some of you speak down there. When I think of America first, I think over the years, I'm 70 years old almost, so I've seen a lot of ebb and flows. But I've learned over the years, if I don't keep my house in order, I can't help anybody. And I learned that in my business. I learned that in church. I learned in life that we do make mistakes, but if you rectify those mistakes and you go forward, you don't share things with bitterness. You share things with a lesson learned, don't do them again, and move forward. America's probably the most generous country that's ever been on this planet. And if you'll look at it this way, if we don't keep America strong, we can't help anyone. We can't do anything out of these borders of the United States of America if we're not strong. So yes, sometimes we have to reel back. We have to get our house in order. We have to get ourselves straight with the Lord. We have to get ours straight with the people. We have to admit our mistakes, and we have to move forward. So I think I'm not trying to take the mind of Senator Gooch, but what we're trying to do here is make Georgia say we're proud of the USA. We're going to put America first to get us strong as we once were, so we can protect people, feed people, offer people a way to come here and find the American dream in the proper way. And when I see that, that's what I think. I don't think of bitterness. I don't think of anger. I think of us trying to be the strongest nation on the earth so we can help other people. And that's what we're here to do, is to be servants. And I believe that's why this country has been blessed the way we have, because we've had that mentality over the years. But we've let bitterness come in for mistakes that this country has made over the years. But you fix them, and like Joseph in Genesis, if we won't be bitter and we take those lessons learned and make ourselves better, we'll be a better country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 22.
Mr. Chairman, if it's the proper time, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
I rule that it is, and I will accept that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
You already had a motion?
Yeah, I already had a motion.
Yeah, we got a motion on the floor.
Okay. We got a second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Everybody, let's do a raising hands. All in favor, raise your hand. 6, 97. All opposed? 4. Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
It was important that Mr. Kenner asked for a motion earlier.
And I did not recognize that motion.
Didn't say that, Mr. Chairman.
It's just. All right, thank you. On the rules. The next measure, Senator Guillen.
Morning, Chairman, committee members. How y'all today? Thank you. Be okay if I I sit down, Mr.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to stay in if you
No.
need me to, whichever way you want me to go. My natural resources chairman today asked us to wear pink, so I try to dress appropriately for my natural resources chairman. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's National Girl Scouts Day today, so hope everybody's,
We thank a lot of you, Natural Resource Chairman, Senator Anderson,
Yeah.
so.
yeah.
Ain't seen many pink blazers, but okay.
Well, you know, when you find one, you better buy it, because you ain't gonna see many. How are y'all doing today?
Doing well.
I bring to y'all Senate Bill 402 today, and for me, I carried this bill for a friend of mine. Said that is a car dealer over in Athens, and he said, you know, my granddaughters live up in Lookout Mountain, and they drive up to Chattanooga and come back and forth periodically. And in Tennessee, they can, being a new driver, they can drive in Tennessee with being 16-year-old driver's license. And for me, he said, Frank, I'm worried about my children and the grandchildren, and I told him, I said, well, sure, what do you want me to do? He said, well, I'd like for them not to be in a car by themselves when they turn 16. Now, I don't know. I look around. I'm not going to say anything in particular for some of us, but for me, it's been a long time. My numbers are reversed. Said, so it's been a long time since I was 16. I'm 61 now, and I look at I remember the first time I got in the car by myself, and I was at my grandmother's house in Athens, Georgia, and I had to drive back home. You know, I knew the way if I could get to the road where I knew where it was, but I had never done that before. And it was one of those things kind of daunting for me. But I tell my daughter now, you know, my daughter's a fighter pilot in the Air Force. She's 25, be 26 next month. And I tell her the most dangerous place to be is broke down on the side of the road. Because when you're trying to fix your car, if you got a flat tire, whatever the case is, and you don't never know. You know, I tell her, I said, somebody comes up to help you, you got to worry about them too, because, you know, you could get hit by somebody, but more importantly, said that person might be there to help you, they might not be there to help you. And for me, this bill took a whole new light for us over in the Athens area. And I don't know, I get emotional sometimes because I lost a child in an accident, and I think about the Riley family and what they've had to go through. And for me, that's one of those things that, y'all remember camping? You'd go to a camp, and first thing they'd do at camp is they'd assign you a buddy. They'd say, find a buddy, and stick with your buddy. If you're going swimming, you're going to go out in the woods, do whatever. And for me, and I'll tell you, it was a guy named Steve Middlebrooks. He owns the Hayward Allen Motor dealership. Said and he asked me about this bill, and I didn't think it was that big a deal, but it's taken a whole new twist in the last couple of weeks. And for me, I know Representative Wiedauer, represents a good portion of Clark County, and we've all struggled with what's going on over there. And for me, I think, okay, I don't care where you're walking, where you're going. If you have somebody with you, there's always somebody's got your back. And for me, I would like to see us be able to take a 16-year-old and change the law a little bit to where, okay, they can have one unrelated. Right now, they have a 6-month waiting period before they can have anybody in the car with them that's unrelated to them. So if they don't have a family member that can go with them, said that's under, you know, they're out there by themselves. And I think about my daughter or others that are out there, and if you have to go through, you know, that by yourself, it's just not one of those things I want to do. Now, Ms. Dold has worked hard to clean up all of the things that we have in our code section. So there's a couple strike-throughs that change. You know, we strike roads and streets to just highways, and I'll let her address that if she wants to from Legislative Council. But it's it's not easy to read. And when she first drafted it for me and did it, I said, this is about as convoluted to read as anything I've ever seen. And she admits that yes, it is. But that's where, if you think about what it does, and I'll let her address the legalese, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't even pretend to watch too much Perry Mason. But for me, this is a bill that I think it does a lot to help protect kids. Said you turn 16 and all I want to do is make sure that you don't have to ride alone in a car all by yourself. And that could be, somebody said, I know my daughter still, I worry about her. She's down in Del Rio, Texas, and going back and forth on the highway. There ain't many people out there on the highway between Del Rio and San Antonio, and she makes that trip about every 2 weeks and get broke down. That's just it's a scary thing. So for me, I would ask for your favorable consideration. I'd be glad to try to answer questions about the bill, but it is one of those things that, for me, it's brought a whole new light of things in the last couple of weeks.
And this allows just one other person in the car. Is what you're doing instead of
one unrelated.
Unrelated. That's what
right.
they would do.
So
we do have a question, Representative Montahan.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for bringing the bill. I do have some concerns that I want to bring up about this bill. In Georgia, we use a graduated licensing system. That graduated licensing system is a key for us to have many types of funding. When you talk to the federal government and others, what has been the response so far? And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have a few questions. What has been the response so far from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety as it pertains to the funding structure for their office and graduated licensing?
And one of the things that as I mentioned, Tennessee allows this currently. I don't think it changes anything on our funding, and there's no federal funding change, because when you look at what this does is we're not opening up to damage anybody or hurt anybody, and I haven't had anybody from the Governor's Highway Safety to tell me that it'll take any money away from them. So I do know that, I get it. Said distracted driving is one of the worst things in the world, and so for me, this is where I just look at it and I said, okay, which is worse? Putting somebody out there all by themselves, it was kind of interesting. Said I had Larry Walker, that's on I-75, and I had Russ Goodman that's on I-75, and you think about the interstate system, how quickly somebody can get picked up and trafficked. I mean, truly, and I tell my daughter all the time, I said, look, you don't know what's going to happen to you. If somebody gets you advantage on you, you got a problem. And that's where I'd much rather know that I've got somebody who's watching my child's back. If she gets broke down on the side of the road, got somebody there that can do that.
Well, thank you. I guess my question is actually more towards the graduated licensing system. I think I understand the bill and the intent for it, but I did want to know, because we're talking about graduated licensing system. So in the state, you go and every year as you start with more restrictions, and you get less and less as time moves on, and that is part of our federal funding structure. We dealt with this when we made an exception to military licenses and the waiting periods for children who wanted to enroll and enlist in the military, and these code sections were brought up then. We passed that bill a couple of years ago, but it too had some impacts on that federal funding formula that we get from there. I did want to mention that.
And I apologize, I'm not an expert on the funding or side of stuff there. I do know that it's allowed in Tennessee, and it's one of those things that for me, I'd give anything in the world to protect my child.
Senator, I wanted to bring two other points, if I may, Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge me. Having passengers that are not your family members In fact, my opinion is probably a little bit more draconian, that having passengers in your vehicle in the first 6 or 12 months, we recommend, and this is something that I do, this is a profession that I've been in for almost 20 years now, is that children don't have any passengers, including family, in their vehicles for the first 12 months. For the fact that this is OG, this is the first type of distracted driving. This is kids going nuts in your back seat. These are people spilling drinks to an inexperienced driver. And while I think I'm totally, understand the sentiment behind the bill to allow for these folks in the case that they have to be out on a dark, gloomy night, I also realize that there is a curfew for children that fall under these license types as well. And so really they shouldn't be out too late. My mother always says, street lights, come on, you better be back in the house. But I do have some, I think, concern with the fact that we are allowing, more of these children in the car together during a very, very, very vulnerable time of their driving journey. And the third thing is, I want to make sure that we're clear that there's nothing that requires a child to drive by themselves, but it's simply the choice. And sometimes that happens. We see hardship permits, where you have children grandparents who have children that need them to drive themselves. But I want to make sure that if somebody feels like their child's going to be in imminent danger, that they also have the choice of driving their child. And I really just want to make sure that we don't, to solve a problem, right, which is a problem, Senator, I agree with you. I would want my daughters, which I have two, to have somebody in the vehicle with them. I have to counterbalance that with the reality that upon leaving school every day in the state of Georgia, in almost every Georgia high school, there's going to be, a few kids in each one of these cars that are going to be going wild and encouraging their friends to make poor decisions behind the wheel. So those are my concerns, Senator. I hope you can see those and just know those going forward. Thank you.
I do understand the concerns, and one of the things that I'm not wanting to load a car down with an inordinate number of them. I know that there's a lot of times where, I had two children. I only have one now. One of them got killed in an accident sitting on our farm, and for me, the pain of losing a child is more than anybody wants to ever experience. And for me, I look at this bill as something in one way to protect those kids. I don't want to have the scenario where you can't have a buddy, and there's a lot of things that go on. And one of the situations with this bill that this is only allowing in the law for it to take place. You as the parent obviously have the total control on what you do with your children. And for me, that's important to know that parenting doesn't stop and the law takes over. You have responsibilities as a parent to decide what's right for your child or not. I was pretty fortunate that, I remember taking my daughter when she turned 16 down to get her license. And it's a whole new world. There's a lot of kids that don't want to drive. For me, all this would do is to allow that to happen. It was interesting. I had pages coming up. I love the page program that we have here at the Capitol. And one of the things that for me, I asked the pages. I said, has anybody just turned 16? And several of them would raise their hand. I do this over the last month. And what was interesting there was, I said, okay, when you're 16 and you have your driver's license, how many of y'all are driving with somebody else in the car? I hate to tell you, said that law enforcement can enforce a law that they can't. You might be good at guessing ages, but I'm not. And that's where, for me, until somebody has a violation, they don't know whether they're 16, 16 and a half. Because when you get to be 16 and a half, you can have one person in your car. And for me, I'm afraid that what Mr. Middlebrooks had told me, he said all their friends, their parents allow them to do it. They're actually allowing them to break the law, which sends a bad message to the child that parents are kind of looking the other way and said, okay, you can take your somebody else in the car with you. And for me, passing a law that doesn't have an enforcement mechanism in it other than when they have an accident or when they get if they got pulled over for that, that's a downside of it. I don't like it, but this is where, for me, the ones that are trying to be responsible and the parents that are being responsible by enforcing the law, we're penalizing them by putting their children at risk. And that's what I want to try to make sure that we have a buddy system to do that. And that's kind of where I'd put this bill is it's truly signing a buddy for you when you're in an automobile driving.
All right. Chairman Ridley, number 23.
Just, and you may have answered this question in a roundabout way. So this is not saying that they must have somebody with them. It's just giving them the option.
That's correct.
Okay, so they can still drive by
They
themselves.
can still drive by themselves, and that's where if the parents, you're the most important person in your child's life, and you should set the direction and where you want to go with that. So, absolutely not. I would never want to force a parent to say you got to have one or you don't have to have one. Said that's a parental decision, and these children, we're still talking minors here, so hopefully their parents are making those calls, and that's where that should be. And for me, all I'm saying is I wouldn't want to put my daughter in a car when she was 16 out. Hey, you're going to whether it's cross town or the cross the country by herself.
All right, thank you.
The more you talk, the more questions we get. So here we go. Chairman Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. And again, I just want to make sure I understand this. As I read it, my questions to you becomes, so at what age or when, I guess the question, when do they become just eligible to do, drive as they need to? I mean, I understand I have children also, and like Representative Monahan, I work with a lot of kids working with this through the Joshua's Law program and that gradual licensing piece. So I guess at what age or what time do we say, okay, now you're ready?
As I understand it now, I'm looking for Ms. Dole to give me an approval on this, but the first 6 months that you have a driver's license when you turn 16, you can't have an unrelated individual under 21 in the car with you. After that, you can have one individual that's unrelated to you. Is that correct, Ms. Dole? And what this bill allows is for that 6 months, for you can have one individual in there. So we're backing that clock up 6 months. And that's all I'm trying to do is make sure that a 16-year-old, we don't have to put them in the car by themselves. That they have, and that's if a parent says, no, you by yourself, I don't want anybody in the car with you, that's a parental decision. But all this does is allow for them to have one unrelated individual in the car with them. If you got a single child and they have to go somewhere and you don't want them to go by themselves, the parent can then decide, hey, you can take this other person with you. And for me, that's all I'm trying to do is make sure that you got somebody to watch your back if you're on the road.
Okay, and my last one, it goes to something that you alluded to, the enforcement piece. Is this not something that, it's really kind of hard to enforce until you have an accident or till you have a road stop or something like that, much like it is now?
That's exactly the problem.
So,
and so what most kids are doing is this is just an informal asking the pages that got a driver's license. I said, did you follow this? And a lot of them didn't. And that's where, for me, my friend that asked me to push this legislation forward, because of his grandkids, said and he's got several granddaughters that are going through that age right now. And he said, Frank, most of their friends, they ignore the law in Georgia, and they go up to Tennessee. It's legal to do, but because they live a few miles from the state line, but his daughter came and testified in committee and the Senate committee hearing on it and said, look, we want to make sure our children follow the law. And that's what the law is, but that puts our child at risk when they're on I-75, they are going up to Chattanooga, and they didn't feel comfortable about that. And I can understand that. And to me, you have children, you want to make sure that your children are safe. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I mean, I will tell you, said I'm a lifetime subscriber to seatbelts. That's one of those things for me. So.
One more, number 22, Representative Montagne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not trying to beat this thing to death, but I do want to. Well, thank you, bud. But I do want to say this: as current law is today, a person can ride in the vehicle with that person, right? And that happens to be it could be the same mom or dad that has a decision of putting that child behind the road or not. It could be a parent, right?
That's right. They can ride with a relative in the car, immediate family member in the car, said they at age 16. But there are times where, to me, that for whatever reason, and nobody says you ever have to drive. Said there's a lot of parents that said, no, my child's never going to drive. Well, great. Said at some point, are they going to drive or not? And so for me, that's a difficult situation. I know I got a brother that lives in Knoxville, and he fostered a kid that it was difficult for a foster child because they're a ward of the state to get driving experience. And we're working. I think there's a bill right now in the legislature here to help deal with that. And those are some of the things that you don't want to put kids out there into a new adulthood. As soon as they turn 18, you've dumped them out there, and they've never had any experience driving. That's not a good situation either. So at some point they have to learn what that age is. That's up to the parents to decide.
I do have a question. That would be: would you be open to an amendment to only allowing these additional passengers being over the age of 21, someone who can carry a weapon with them to protect that child during that trip?
Well, the law right now allows for somebody that's over 21, I believe, if I'm correct, over 21 to be in the car with them. They can, if the person's over 21 and they can get them in the, they can drive with one unrelated person that's over 21 right now. What I'm saying is that doesn't always work in the family situation, what's going on.
So this bill, to circumscribe what we're doing, is to allow 16-year-olds to drive with other 16 to 20-year-olds.
16 to under 21, or could be somebody younger than that. Could be a 14-year-old. For me, yeah, I would hate to think that some parents thinking a great idea would be, let me put you in here with a 5-year-old that couldn't watch your back or do anything there. But that's where, for me, what the objective of the bill is to make sure they have somebody that's watching what's going on.
Okay, that's all the questions we have. We do have someone in the audience signed up. Bob Dallas, if you'll come to the podium, state your name and who you're with. Yes.
Well, sure, I can do that. Morning, Senator, again. I believe 2 people may have come in that I didn't give this to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator, again, I appreciate your words. My name is Bob Dallas. I was the director of the Governor's Office of Highway Safety from 2003 to 2011 under the Perdue administration. Worked with many of you on this committee over many things related to highway safety. And let me just begin by saying I've worked with this committee since 1990, and many others in the Transportation Committee, Public Safety Committee, really for one thing, and that is improving Georgia's highway safety. Georgia is known for having probably the best laws on the book for graduated licensing. We call it TADRA, Teen Adult Responsibility Act. And it's because of the work that you and your predecessors have done that have made Georgia's laws the best in the country that we are looked to for other states to follow. And I might add that would include Tennessee. What I have before you are a few documents that evidence that TADRA is actually working for Georgians. You've read about the spike in crash tests in Georgia and throughout the country, and we have seen those go up, but in areas like pedestrians, impaired driving, and speeding. But where they have improved is really with teen driving, and it's attributed directly to TADRA. And the document in front of you, the first one is SB 402 commentary, is a brief summary of what the data shows given by Dr. Roop. He's over at the Injury Prevention Research Center at Emory University. I co-chair there the Transportation Safety Task Team. And what it does on page 2 is it shows the difference. What this bill does is allows a novice driver, one who's most impacted by distractions, to have a non-related person under 21 be with them during that first 6-month period. And the data is really clear. The data shows that during that 6-month period, when you are a novice driver, you are more likely to get into a crash with another passenger there. It's a bad distraction. The third page talks about what the data shows with one additional passenger or two. And what you'll see there on the third page is that you have a 44 to 46% increase in the risk of getting into a crash with one passenger during the novice time period, twice as much with 2 passengers, and 3 times as much with 3 passengers. And that's what the data shows. And then if you turn to page 4, let me just point out that the crash risk is highest after you first get your license at 16. I mean, that's just the reality. Not surprisingly, you're inexperienced. And as we can say, as Senator Gann correctly pointed out, if we can remember that far back, we too were novice drivers at one time. And what this does is it allows the driver to focus on how to drive as opposed to the passenger. And let me just point out on page 5 that the data, once again, when we look at the crash rates per 100,000 population, what we see is that with the implementation of this law, we have improved our outcome significantly by about 18%. And on page 6, I just point out, the most dangerous road in our state is not the interstate. And I think Representative Smith knows this. It's our arterials, it's our local roads that really produce the most injuries and deaths, and that's especially for the novice driver. And I'll point on page 7 from the insurance industry that by having this law in effect, that we have seen a decline in the crash rates associated with teens. And let me just turn you to the second 2 documents in your package. They're just a summary of reports talking about how Georgia's law is working, and one is about Georgia specifically, and one is about graduated licensing in general. And what those do is it clearly shows that what Georgia has done, the work that you have done, has made our teens safer on the road. And trust me, I have 5 boys, count them, 5, gone through driving with each of them. And boys can get into trouble for a whole lot of different things. And all I'm saying is that this is the one place where we have demonstrated with our data that this is the right thing to do. And I will note in the final document that you have in your package, the question is, well, Tennessee allows it, why shouldn't we? Well, the fact of the matter is Tennessee does allow it, yet their crash death rate is higher than here in Georgia. So we've been very good at demonstrating in our state that data and best practices produce good outcome with good policy. And I will say this about our teen driving law. When that was put into place, I worked with members of this committee, members of many other committees, the public, the educators, people in driver's education, and we took about 2 years to get it right. And so all I'm saying is that this is not the right way to do it. If we want to change our laws to make them better, I am all for it. I suggest to you that the way to do that is to bring the people who are stakeholders and are interested in the outcome together, and let's go ahead and study it. And trust me, there are probably changes that should be made to the Teen Adult Driver Responsibility Act because you know what? We've learned more since it was first put in. And so that's, excuse me, that's what I'm suggesting to you. And I'll close with this one point. Anybody with a child, any parent, no matter what age, I don't care when that parent loses that child. It could be yesterday, it could be 10 years ago, it could be 30 years ago. When it's brought up, it's like it was just happening. And I'm fully aware of circumstances where intentional injuries occur, and we read about those. But this distraction happens to our teens day in and day out, and it produces so many tragic outcomes in our state. And I can say with pretty good certainty, for any given 5-year period since this has been in effect, 600 teens have not been involved in a fatal crash. Those are people that are here today that a parent's not grieving for. So yes, I'm all for making changes to our Teen Adult Driver Responsibility Act. Absolutely. Working with the stakeholders, having the opportunity to have conversation, and then let's get it right. Because if we don't, I know what the outcome is. I'm ready to say for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Dallas? We do have Chairman Prince.
Yes, thank you for your information and just sharing it with me. I didn't have an opportunity to read anything, so I have to take your word for what you're saying that's in this your documents. But and you talked about the number of teens driving, having someone else in the car with them.
Yes.
Those numbers. Did you guys talk about cell phones or anything like that?
Well, that's certainly another distraction, and we have a law in effect in Georgia, which took us several years
Right.
and a very long study committee to get right, which is a hands-free law in Georgia. And so that applies to teens as well as adults.
Yeah, and I was a part of that study committee. But
That's
the
right.
question comes to the numbers that you talked about. Did your numbers include that as well? Just
Well,
other than
this is the
passengers?
entirety of the TADRA law as well as the distracted driving. Remember, before we had some of the changes for the TADRA law, for the hands-free, teens were not allowed to use the phone anyway. So it was focused more on the adult. And I'll recall when Governor Perdue did sign the first distracted driving law in Georgia, one bill was just for teens, another bill was for adults. So we had two different bills, and of course with hands-free, we merged them together. But this data includes the fact that a teen or any of us should not be holding our devices while we drive. If that answers your question, I hope it does.
All right, I see no further questions. Thank you for your testimony this morning.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Number 23.
Mr. Chairman and my friend, I hope you don't take offense. I've got a 16-year-old girl right now, and she took driving class and is a great driver. And we live in Chatsworth, and this is only about 25 miles to Calhoun, but I won't even let her drive to Calhoun by herself. I mean, we still get in the car with her if she has to go somewhere like that. She can drive back and forth to school and that kind of stuff. And I understand your point, but the example you brought up, the girl was driving from Lookout Mountain to Athens,
Chattanooga.
or from
So,
Lookout
is what
Mountain.
my understanding from talking to her mother and her grandfather.
Right. Well, and if you come down Lookout Mountain, because I'm real familiar because I'm up there, if you come down from Lookout Mountain, you go under the interstate, and you're in Chattanooga. And if you're going to the mall, you got to get on the interstate.
I'm not driven it. I'm not that familiar with it. I'm assuming you get on I-75.
Yeah, and I mean, and like I said, my daughter's 16. I won't let her on the interstate by herself, even though, and she's a great driver. I mean, I think girls are probably pay a whole lot more attention than boys do.
And that's where, for me, I'm glad that you do. For me, that's good parenting. You make the decisions for your child and what you think are appropriate, and that's why I don't want to tell a parent you got to do this. You know, when somebody had said you have to. No, absolutely not. That's where, for me. But there are circumstances where certain parents they're like, okay, you got to go here. Said let me make sure there's somebody in the car with you. I can tell you, it scared the you know what out of me when my daughter had to drive to Del Rio, Texas,
Oh,
the first time to go to the Air Force Base.
And I understand. And my son's 18. He drives to Tifton down to college. You know, when he comes home, and hell, I still worry about him. You know, I probably worry about him more than I do her because he takes after me a little more. So you know, but I just think there's so many distractions in a car already. Even though everything's advanced with hands-free, you still got navigation and you got all this stuff. You know what you're looking off at. And I don't think I feel comfortable passing this bill the way it is. And I don't know how to fix it either. I've been sitting here trying to rack my brain, trying to come up with an idea how to fix it. But that's just my 2 cents worth.
Well, let's do this. I tell you, there seems to be a lot of questions. We won't take a vote. We just have a hearing only today. Let's talk offline and see if we can get everybody to a consensus, something that we can live with. So let's
Thank
do
you
that.
in the committee for your consideration. It's one of those things that for me, the bill, you know, I having a buddy, I don't care where you're at. If you're walking, you're jogging, you're going shopping, whatever, having somebody with you is one of those things that to me brings a whole new light to it, and that's why it really hits me in the gut, because I think about, okay, there are times when even though my daughter had graduated college, I was scared to death for her to drive to Texas, and she had to drive that by herself.
When mine was going to Young Harris, 6 hours from home, I would call her about every 30 minutes, and I said, "You should be at mile marker 212 now." Yeah, that's where you're at. I'd time it. So absolutely, you worry about your kids.
Yeah, and that's what I hope that.
Well, you had to climb up. Remember Green Acres? You had to climb up on a pole and do this. Yeah. But no, they had it back then. But anyway,
Thank you,
Senator,
Mr. Chairman.
We do have one other question, number 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess it's really more of a comment. You know, I guess I've been sitting here listening to it, and I think about when someone's walking or running. I mean, I would love to have a partner, but I guess in the car is a lot more distraction and things of that nature. So I like it. I've got an 11-year-old grandson. I've got a 16-year-old grandson, and I've got a 20-year-old grandson. And don't get me wrong. I think about it, and I wouldn't even want my 20-year-old grandson with my 16 because they argue and fight a lot. So, I mean, but as a family member, but I just hope that it's something that we can do, that we can come to do this, because I like it, but I just don't know. I just don't think that.
And that's where I get it. The change is from a 16-and-a-half-year-old to a 16-year-old, because I don't want somebody out there having to be alone. And that's where, for me, when my constituent brought it to me and asked for he said most kids are ignoring the law. They don't do it, and shame on them. But he taught his daughter well. He said, my daughter, she tries to instill her kids, this is the law. We have to follow the law. Right. And the parents' law is the most important one. Said you set the rules for your children. Your children set the rules for your grandchildren. So that's where you need to be responsible for your kids and your grandkids. And I know there's times when sometimes the law interferes with that, and that's where, for me, I'm asking that you look at it for somebody that only has one child or whatever. I guarantee you that person that has one child, if it got there, they want to take care of their child. So thank you,
Senator. Thank you. Is Senator Beach here? Anybody with Senator Beach? I've not seen. That's the other bill we're going to take up today, but I don't see anybody here, and it's 2 minutes to 9. So we will adjourn this meeting and schedule. We have another one scheduled next Tuesday, but we can come. So we might try to do something before then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.